Alrighty, hello there people, this is Michael from Make It WordPress, and today I'm going to look into A2 hosting. So who am I? I'm Michael, like I said, and I'm on the quest to find the best possible for WordPress, and one part of the quest is finding the best possible hosting. I did test a lot of hosting options already, and now I'm in the journey to test these more, less expensive hosting companies. And one of these hosting companies is, like you guessed it, A2 hosting. And today I'm going to walk through to a hosting. We'll be setting up WordPress on A2 hosting, and I will just briefly reflect my experience with them and how well they're doing. So as you can see, I am on their page already, and they offer a lot of different hosting products. If you don't know what hosting is actually renting some space on the internet and allows you to have a website. But if you're a more frequent watcher of my videos, I do imagine that you know what hosting is. And WordPress hosting is aimed at hosting for WordPress, so it's optimized to host WordPress websites with. And as you may know, WordPress is one of the most popular pieces of software to create your website with, create a blog, and any other kind of website. So A2 hosting has a WordPress offering. They have basically two kinds of offerings: a shared WordPress offering and a managed WordPress offering. And actually the shared offering is quite similar to what they're offering by default. The cheapest plan, I'll switch to the monthly prices, starts from around $10 a month. And it moves up. You can also, of course, read this on the website. The key difference between these plans is that the more cheap plans don't have the turbo boost and use a different technology to run the service on, which may have some influence on the speed and performance. I just want to show you the managed WordPress offering. It's a bit more extensive. It includes backups, the Jetpack plugin. It's more easy to set up staging on the managed environment, and it also runs in different environments, and we will see that later in the video. I will both be looking in the shared subscription and in the managed subscription. I have both subscriptions now running for this video and also for the review I'm writing on my website, so you can also spot the differences. Another thing is that on managed, it's easier to set up SSL, and like I said, backups. So let's see how it actually looks in practice. I'll just logging in. So the first thing you see in here is your client overview, and it's a different area than where you manage your website. That's on a separate kind of platform, and I find it a bit confusing, but nevertheless, everything around your account you can do. You can see and do here. You can see your services, the domains you have registered. I did not have a domain. A domain is, for example, a2hosting.com, but I have my domains elsewhere. But if you like, you can register domains. It's pretty easy. And register, and just hit register, and you can register it here. There's some quick login to the cPanel that can be used to manage websites. You can see your billing details in here. Go to the support section. Let's just see how it looks like. Here you can see the tickets. I had some contact with the support already. I also test them out, and you see there's some tickets open. And I also tested all the different kind of subscriptions, and it was kind of painful to upgrade because send a ticket and then they manually will upgrade it for you, and it takes some time actually. And let's get back to the portal home, back to this one. As you can see, I'm already clicking on the wrong links. You can also see your invoices in here. Let's go ahead and create a WordPress website on A2 hosting. So for that, I need to go back to my client area, and I'll be looking at my two services. There's this managed WordPress service, which I will be looking into later, and the Turbo Boost web hosting service, which is also running in here. You can see what it is on the front page of the website, what these subscriptions have, but they both support WordPress. The actual features you will see now. So let's add a website on the Turbo boost web hosting service. I click on manage, and then I go to log into cpanel. And there we are. Now I am cpanel, and I don't know if you're familiar with cpanel. It's an abbreviation for control panel. It's one of the most popular packages that web hosting companies use to allow their customers to manage websites. As you can see in it, is a section where you can manage files. There is a file manager in which you can see all the files that are on your hosting subscription. You can add FTP accounts, which you can use to log into your server using FTP group and move files easily over the server. There's a section to install apps. So a lot of different apps are supported by A2 hosting, but we are looking to the WordPress A2 optimized. There's a section for databases. All the data on WordPress, such as the content of posts, but also the users, the categories and text WordPress uses, are stored in a database. And in the database section, there are a couple of tools that can help you to manage your database. And you may know PHPMyAdmin, which is a famous tool to manage your database. There's a section with the so there's a domain section, and in that you can add your domains, your subdomains, and so forth. And if you want to add a website to a domain cpanel or to a subdomain, you need to declare it here before adding it using the Softaculous app installer. So we'll be doing that. We will just adding the A2CP subdomain for this and create it. I already have this pointed to this server at where I have my domain registered. If you have your domain registered at A2 hosting, it will work out of the box. So we created the subdomain, and later on we will install WordPress on it. Furthermore, there is an email section. And the great thing is that A2 hosting also gives the possibility to have email. It's very easy to create an account. You can just hit create, select your domain, and create the user, the storage you need, and so forth. And then you can find more information on how to connect it to your Outlook or how to log in on the knowledge base of A2 hosting. Furthermore, they have a spam firewall, but it's a paid add-on. One of these neat tricks. And it will cost you some extra money to have a better spam protection. You can also see some metrics, and I did some testing, how fast the website was and also how many users it could handle. And there's also a section with resource usage. And in my experience, if you have a website that has too many users, you will be quickly squeezed out. As you can see, my load testing successfully hit the limits. So be aware, the shared hosting, A2 hosting, I find it pretty fast, but there are limits on visitors. If you're getting a serious amount of visitors, your resources will be limited. Then there's also some security settings. Immunify 360 is available, which helps to scan your website for malware. There's a mod security feature, which is kind of extra firewall. A2 hosting also supports Cloudflare, which is a CDN that can help speed up your website. You need a Cloudflare account for that. And you can also change your PHP version, which is the software WordPress partially runs on, and you can also set up different kind of apps built with other programming languages. At last, we can set up our cron jobs, which are regular running jobs, such as daily jobs that need to be performed. And there's a virus scanner. You can log into the server using a terminal if you're an advanced user. And there is also some other information, such as changing languages. You can manage users, so add additional users. For example, I have this other user, which is used to access files over FTP. And like I said, with FTP, you can use an FTP program to access the files on your servers instead of logging in to your browser. Now that I gave a brief introduction of the panel, and by the way, on the right, you can see the IP address of the server, also the file usage. It's the number of files actually on your server and all the other limits, because I already have the Turbo Max subscription. It's pretty unlimited, But like I said, CPU usage is not unlimited. So if you're going to have a lot of visitors on a short time, A2 will squeeze your website. Nevertheless, let's get to the most important part, and that is to install WordPress on A2 hosting. And what this will do is set up WordPress, but in a way that it is optimized to or for A2. So let's hit the install button. I'll just be moving it to this subdomain. Well, the rest is not so interesting. I think it will be offline after the 3 years, so you can try to log in, but I hear you thinking. And let's install it. And actually this does take quite some time, longer than I expect these things to take. So that was some wait, but as you can see, WordPress is installed now, and what WordPress A2 Optimized does is that it makes a different login URL for your WordPress installation, so it doesn't have the default URL. And let's visit it. Clicking the link will also enable you to directly log into the WordPress installation, so you don't need put in your login details again, which is, I think, pretty neat. Sometimes it takes some time for this to load. As you can see, it's pretty slow, and in my experience of testing the platform, I sometimes found out it didn't load really fast on the back end. So in the meantime, on the front end, it installs just the default and newest theme of WordPress at the time of shooting this video. And in the back end, you can see, well, it's basically WordPress. What A2 does by default is set up a few plugins for you that make your site run somewhat more smooth. The easy hide login is used to change your login URL, as we said, as we have seen in Softaculous in here. By default, they also install an image optimizer, so your images will be smaller and your website can load faster. Jetpack is installed. Well, Jetpack has a lot of functionalities, and it's not really in scope of the video to talk about all the functionalities of Jetpack. They also set up WP forms that can be used to add forms to your website. And the two most important things are that they install a version of W3 Total Cache, which is used to improve the performance of your website, and optimized WordPress plugin. And what it does is that the first one gives a version of W3 Total Cache and enable caching, minification, and other technologies by default. And these are things that make your website a lot faster. Because we used this A2 optimized installer within the Softaculous, this is already set up by default, so you don't need to manually optimize your WordPress website. Please note that if you don't have a lot of knowledge about this, it can give errors if you use certain WordPress themes or WordPress plugins. It doesn't always work out of the box, but in general, it works pretty well. Another thing they add is that other plugin from A2 that I said, and it's the A2 optimized WP plugin, and basically it's kind of a checklist that figures out if everything that needs to be activated to have an optimal site is activated. And as you can see, a couple of things are still not enabled. So this is also pretty helpful and helps you to get more out of your website, and I think it's one of the better things of A2. So having said that, now we have installed WordPress using the shared subscription. But like I said, let's just move back to the offering. They have these shared subscriptions, but also the managed subscription, which offers somewhat more functionality, such as backups. And also it's powered by Plask instead of cpanel. So let's see how that looks like. For that, we close our other site. We add it in here. Let's close this. Go back to our client area and my services. And I also have the managed WordPress subscription running in here. And let's log into the Plask control panel. So there we are. So this is the same hosting company, and it's also a WordPress hosting offering, but it's their managed WordPress hosting offering, and it looks totally different than the cPanel we had before. And well, what they offer is quite similar. So what I will be doing is adding a new subdomain in here and setting up WordPress again. Plask works a little bit different than cPanel. You can see all your websites that are running here on the main the first page you're looking at. On the right, there are a couple of common tasks or common functionalities you want to do, and you can also see your resource usage there on the right. Plask also supports email. Now I set up one email address. It goes pretty easy as well. You can just fill in this column. I'll set up forwarding and aliases and so forth. There's a file manager in here in which you can see all the different files in here. You can manage your databases. There's now one database used for WordPress websites. You can see some statistics in here, mainly traffic and views display. You can also add other users to this control panel. You can see some account details, and there's a WordPress toolkit available. And in the WordPress toolkit, you can see the different WordPress applications that are installed, and I'll be looking into that later. Let's just go back to websites and domains, and I'm going to add a subdomain. And for this, we'll be using the Plask subdomain. Again, if you have your domains at A2 hosting, this process is much more easier. I have them at a different place, and I just pointed my domains to A2 hosting, so it works out of the box. So let's add this subdomain. Well, what you can do here is manage our files for this domain. We can manage our databases, install WordPress, set up the web application firewall, change some other things. There's Git, which is useful for developers, so they can manage the code that is put on the server more easily. And it's also possible to install, much more easily install an SSL certificate. It's much more easier than in cPanel actually. So let's just install that. And let's install WordPress now on this subdomain. And again, we will have some settings we can put in. Let's just use the same name and password as the installation we did on cPanel. We can choose our database and also set up some automatic update settings, and that's automatic updating for everything, and hit install. And now we need to wait again. As you can see, there's also a detailed information on your progress if you want to see what's going on under the hood. And there we are. So now WordPress is installed on this A2 plask.make it work.press, and as you can see, we also switch to this WordPress tab, and within Plask you have the WordPress toolkit, and this works pretty cool because you can do some useful maintenance things out of this panel. So we can set up maintenance mode for WordPress. We can set up debugging if you're developing your website and want to see errors. You can set up password protection, so there will be a password pop-up. We can also set up a smart update, but that is a pro feature and not enabled by default from the offering of A2 hosting. And you can also disable the cron jobs on WordPress. There are some tools such as backup and restore. We can backup this file, and will be backupped locally. What A2 hosting is offering is also a remote backup functionality, but that goes through Jetpack, and they offering a free Jetpack personal license if you go for a more expensive subscription of managed WordPress, and that will allow you to have remote backups as well. From within Plask, it's also possible to set up remote backups. Well, this backup's in progress. We can close it down now. It's not that interesting to look at this. I think there's a file manager again, like I showed, and we can also see the plugins that are installed in here and themes that are installed. And also we can manage our database right from here. So for example, we can just install a plugin inner. Let's install contact form 7. And now it's installed. Well, that was easy, and we can do the same for Teams. So this is pretty useful toolkit already. Imagine we just want to log in. So let's log in. And there we are. This is a funny thing. This doesn't work. This installation is available, but the default login long is changed by A2 hosting. So you cannot use this, and that's what Plask is using. So quite fun to see that it doesn't work. And the workaround is to enable this easy hide login. Disable it from the panel, and then we have our default login link again. So as you can see, this works now. And I will be clicking on this. This also would work. Now I get a notification from A2 Optimize that I need to make my site more secure, but the odd thing is that they broke the login URL themselves from this panel. So in my opinion, it's a bug and it should work much more easy. While I like the Plask panel much more than the cpanel, it's better designed. These kind of things are crucial that they work. Anyhow, we have WordPress now installed using the managed WordPress offering. And again, it's just a plain WordPress installation. And similar to the offering we saw before, the unmanaged offering, also the A2 Optimize plugin is set up with a couple of recommendations, and also the performance plugin is set up with some settings, and a couple of settings are different because you're using the managed WordPress subscription, and furthermore most things are the same. As you can also see, the dashboard feels somewhat more snappier than the shared package, and in my opinion it loads somewhat faster. So let's just move back to our Plask panel. Another thing I want to show you is the clone functionality. You can copy data, but you can also use cloning, which you can use to create a staging environment. And a staging environment can be used if you want to temporarily develop things. So you create a clone of this WordPress installation, you change some things, you break some things, you fix some things, and then you can clone it back. So in that way, you don't have to do any dangerous changes on a live website. Very useful feature. So I hope this was clear and it gave a good overview on how WordPress works on A2 hosting. Just a couple of reflections. I did some load testing, and the performance, so how fast your website loads and how many visitors it could handle, is good for the shared packages, but it wasn't as good as I expected for the managed WordPress packages. And also the CPU, so that's the processor of the server, the amount of CPU you can use is squeezed by A2 hosting, and it's pretty limited. I can get more performance from some other competitors. Also, I did test various subscriptions, and it was a very painful process to upgrade each time. I had to make a ticket, I had to wait a couple, sometimes an hour or more to move to the next plan. And while other hosting parties, you can just hit the upgrade button and you're on the next level. So maybe I'm a bit spoiled that some hosting providers are so good. Also, I have been in contact with support, and support was pretty friendly. Sometimes they replied fast, meaning within 1.5 minutes, and other times it took some more time, especially for technical support. And the technical support also gave a good explanation, but they mainly referred to the knowledge base of A2 hosting, and they have a very good knowledge base. Let me just paste in the URL to the knowledge base. They have a very elaborate knowledge base, actually, where you find articles about almost anything, including WordPress and security and how to do some technical things. I think it's pretty good. Nevertheless, let's move back to our Plask panel. Another really odd thing is that it's running a very old version of PHP out of the box, which is not really recommended. This really surprises me. Anyhow, I think the offering of A2 hosting is fine, but Not really in all of it. I think the plask offering is more easy to use than the cpanel offering, but then the performance is not as good as I expected. And also, I think support was friendly. In the end, I had to sort a lot of things out myself and send over a lot of tickets before upgrades were even processed. And that doesn't make sense because if I would be a hosting company and people would like to upgrade, I would immediately I would make it as easy as possible because that brings in some new money. Nevertheless, I hope you like this walkthrough of A2 hosting. I have written an elaborate article about it in which you can see more details into the features that A2 hosting offers, the performance, also the pricing, and if it's fair compared to its competitors. My detailed experience with support, and also what are my conclusion on how good A2 hosting is. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below.